Well, hello, everybody, and happy Tuesday evening to you all. Welcome to Beyond 2D.
Yes.
That's Dugas and Dozier.
Right there, right there. Over there.
Over there. Wait, no. I always, my camera's always backwards, and I'm trying to figure it out. I'm one of your hosts, Jessica Dugas, and I'm joined by the fabulous Farron Dozier over here.
What's the count? How you doing?
I'm good. I'm sad because we haven't talked in 2 weeks. It's been such a good series. Seriously, like I've literally been over here preaching to my children. Have you listened to the episode? Because you need to learn something.
Exactly.
I'm excited. So the first week, you guys, we were talking about the definition of communication. We dug in a little bit of that. Though to be fair, Jessica comes with dictionary.com every week. And thesaurus.com. And then last time we talked about responsibility in communication, which was a fun time.
Yeah. I hit my head on the microphone a few times.
I recall that. And tonight we are digging into listening in communication, because we've talked a lot about how we talk, how we present ourselves in communication. And tonight we get to that other half, which dare I say is probably the most important half of communication. What would you say?
Definitely, because after I learned that thinking I was a good listener, I was not quote unquote a good listener. No, I was not. I was ready to fix and ready to analyze everything.
Yeah. So I'm excited to get into this this part of this conversation tonight. Notice how I didn't get into how I've been a bad listener yet, because that's going to come. I'm sure I'll be feeling all kinds of sorry for myself by the end of the show.
But Band-Aid off tonight. The Band-Aid off tonight.
That's it. But I'm excited tonight because our conversation is going to be amplified beyond 2D by two fabulous guests. We're going to be starting off the show with Michele Risa, and coming up in the second half of the show, we'll be talking to Caldwell Williams. We'll tell you all about them. And I'm just excited to hear their experience and their expertise on this topic, listening and communication.
For sure.
It's going to be awesome. I want to remind you guys, if you're joining us live tonight, head over to the comment section, say hi, let us know where you're joining from, and let us know how you feel about listening in communication. Do you feel like you're a good listener? And I want you to be honest. On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being I couldn't be any better at listening and communication, and 1 being, please, I need an intervention. Please put it in the comments. Okay. That's what we need to do. I know that Brittany was in the front row tonight. She's very excited about this evening. Divine DNA is here. That means Angelique and Donnell are out in the audience. So we're excited to see you guys tonight. And should we get into our fabulous guests this evening?
We should, because we're going to need every minute of this.
We are. All right. Our first guest tonight is the founder of Collaborative Solutions since 1991. Given our polarization, she offers healing conversations, deeper dive, and 360 health to shift from contention to connection and create holistic well-being. She holds an MA from Columbia University, is certified as a conscious business change agent in BreathWalk and PTSD, and has been a member of the board of directors. I have been a part of her her healing conversations, and I will tell you, it was an inspirational experience and a lesson, a deep dive in listening. So without further ado, let's welcome Michele Risa to the show. Welcome, Michele.
Hello, lovely to be here. Thank you very much.
See you.
So good to have you back again on the Breakthrough Show Network. Brittany's saying she's a solid 3, working to a 4. I think that's Angelique out there. Angelique is saying 4. So I would love to know what Donnell thinks as well. Ruth is here. Hi, Ruth. It's good to see you. She says she rates herself a 3 and always room to improve on the listening scale. So Michele, talk to us about your thoughts about listen. What does listening in communication look like to you?
Thank you for asking that. And I agree with what Farron said earlier. It is the most important part of communication, because if we can agree that we're looking to connect with the person or people to whom we're speaking or have in front of us, right, the best way to know who they are, right, and how best to communicate is to learn who they are. And that means to listen. That means to listen. And I'll quickly go into a story when I was living at Citibank. I don't even say work, living at Citibank. The treasurer would tell me how at that time he was buying one portfolio after another. And what he did always at the tables, at the negotiation tables, was listen first, right? Listen first. And that enabled him, obviously, to understand their concern. So beyond, I'm going to go to people in a moment, but just from a business perspective, right? That once we can better understand who's in front of us, we can then better tailor what we're saying so they can hear us and they can understand us. So yes, though we're conditioned to be talkers, presenters, our elevator pitch, I would really say to everyone, give it a try, right? Don't take any of what I'm going to say at face value. This is a wonderful laboratory. Give it a try and see what happens when you literally say to someone, so tell me, what would you like to share with me, right? Let's be Socrates. I'll say that. Socrates was a great listener because he always asked questions, right? He always asked questions. So I have much more to say on the topic, but I will at least, well, I'll let you ask another question, but I have much more that I want to share on the topic.
I want to touch on something you said in the beginning too, because I learned this late in age, that sometimes when you think you know someone, you stop listening and you stop getting to know them. And I thought that was such a beautiful principle to live by, because we always think, well, I know her. I already know what they're going to say. So you're already like, whether it's a good or bad conversation or whatever that is in the way, you're going to look for that. And it's not always a positive either. So it's like, I know you, and so I know what you're going to say to me. So I'm already kind of defensive. I'm already ready to react. And when they taught us that, when I learned that when you think that you know someone, that you actually stop listening to them, I was like, okay, I'm not a good listener for sure.
Right. And so, Farron, what I learned also is that when we're with family or friends who know us, quote unquote, right? When we change, they don't see the change, right? We wonder why, we're like, wait a minute. And they see us as we were 5, 20, whatever, pick a number, right? And so we have a hard time with our families and friends because they just, as you said, I know who this is. I know what they're going to say. I know their beliefs. And you don't give people a chance to just be who they are in this moment, right? So as I would hope everyone who knows me knows to say, Michele, what's been happening now? Because that is my commitment, right? To grow and change every moment and improve the quality of my life. So yes, please ask so I can share with you what's really.
And my last piece of that, and how I made it make sense in my mind is, how we talk. Sometimes we talk to people like they're a chair, or a table, and this is the way that you are, and you can't be any other way in my listening. And so how I talk to you, but the chair is, you could stand up in a chair and change the light bulb, but it's not a ladder, and so we kind of talk and listen to people like they're a fixed object. And once you understand how you're talking or listening to that person, I believe that's enough. That could be enough space to kind of hear them differently, because as you said, we grow, we can change, we develop, we learn more. And so to me, that's one of the 5 hurdles, is that piece of knowing, because sometimes we just talk to people like they're a fixed object and they can only be this way when they're talking to us, or we listen to them from this one way. and we miss out on everything else because of how we view them.
And let's add to that by appearances. I'm a woman, right? You're a man. So I make an assumption. How you look, how you dress, race. I mean, whatever you're going to be judging someone or assuming who they are, right? By appearances or even how they speak, right? So one of our biggest problems, since we're so polarized these days all over the world, is our inability to listen because we make assumptions immediately about who you are, what your beliefs are, and what you're going to say or do. So if we can even just put a pin into that, right, and say, hey, you know, if you really want to reduce the polarization in the world, listen.
Michele, I've been a part, I mentioned, of your healing conversations, and in that event that Michele holds, and I say holds because she really does hold the space for everybody to participate and practice that muscle of listening and speaking and about really hot button topics. And every time I've participated, it has always been a pleasant experience. And I leave going, why can't it always be a pleasant experience to talk to everybody? Do you think that some of that pleasantry is simply because we don't know each other yet? Because maybe some of the people that we've met are strangers, and like, what's your thoughts on? Does everybody have this? Am I the only one that has this kind of pleasant experience?
Okay, thank you for asking. So, number one, I do say it's healing conversations, making difficult conversations easy, right? So people are coming with that interest, right? And let's just assume everyone you speak with may not be coming with the same. I may have an agenda. I may want to convince you of my point of view. So that may be their interest. And the other, Jessica, is, if you recall, I did have agreements. I don't know what else to call them. And I know you will say, well, I mean, things like being open-minded, be curious, use discovery. So you'll say, well, I can't do that to someone that I meet. So let me give you an answer to making more conversations that way, which is, and as a parent, you know this already, but I'll say it, is you model it. Right? When you model listening and asking questions and not assuming, people see and hear that, and they're more apt to do that as well. If you don't interrupt, or even before you share, you say something like, can I ask you a question? Right? And they're saying yes, well, then they're more likely to hear your question. Right? So model is one suggestion. Yes, Ron.
When you said that, what came to my mind as my interpretation of that is a context. Sometimes you have to set the tone for the context of a conversation, so it kind of hones in on that particular subject, so people will start to think from that particular subject versus, with no context, you could just bring up any kind of subject to a talk. And so that was one thing that I learned is doing my best to create a context for a conversation, so that the person or people know that this is the area that we're talking about. So you can't bring another topic to this because this is what we're focused on. And that's hard for people because we want to input, outside things, but keeping that context could keep away misunderstandings, upsets, fights, arguments for me. And then the other part of that I learned early on is creating the space they called it clearing. Like before you even have a discussion, like let people say, like, how's your day? Like, what's on your mind? Anything you want to get out of your space before we have this, deep dive conversation. And sometimes it's best for people to, say where they're at right now, because they could be worried about leaving the iron plugged in or leaving the oven on. And so am I really listening to you? Because I have all this other stuff going on where I'm not present to to where I'm at, that maybe, having an opportunity for people to just go through their life and just say where they are so they can voice that. And then that, to me, creates a space where a person can begin to listen to what's going on around them.
Yeah, that might help. It might lead them down a rabbit hole, but again, we have the ability, let me just say, we have the ability to ask. So even if they went in a direction you didn't want them to or hoped not to, again, using Socrates, you'd say, well, do you mind if I asked you a slightly different question, that I'd like to learn more about? So, and maybe, you can provide that. So again, I think maybe we're adding this to our mix here. In addition to listening, questioning and getting someone to agree is very powerful, because then they've agreed. So that might be helpful.
What does listening look like to you, Michele? And I would love for you to start off by maybe telling us if you've always been as good of a listener as you are, because you're really an incredible listener. And I'm like, she must have been born this way.
Goodness, no. I don't. Yeah, no. I let me answer what I think listening is, because I would say, okay, let's turn it. We've been focusing on others, and I want to say that when I think about listening, really listening, what does it mean for me to listen to me, my heart? Right. And I'll just say, all of us, just for a moment, right, close your eyes and say, what would it look like or feel like to listen to my heart, right, in this moment? And I will only let that be a few seconds and suggest, right, it is requiring us to slow down, right, and be in that place of not talking, right? And I would say, I'll speak for myself and interested in hearing what happened when you were silent. To hear the various, let me preface it, to stay as a witness to the thoughts. We think 1,000 thoughts per blink of the eye. If we all know this, we don't go crazy because they pop up. Okay, there's another thought. No problem. Right. So another thought comes up, and the beauty of being conscious is we get to choose which ones we want to focus on. So I could say to myself, oh goodness, I'm blue. Well, if that thought came up, I'd say, Michele, no, not really. You're not really blue, right? And it's helpful. And I could say, sweetheart. I would actually preface that if I were talking to myself and wanting to listen. If I really want to listen to me, I'm not going to berate or right, judge. I'll say, sweetheart, no, you're not blue. What is more, I'll say, authentic, right? So I would say listening, in answer to your question, Jessica, it's a process, right? It's a process. Like, what is really true? What's authentic for me? And to your point about holding the space, holding my intention to truly hear you, meaning what is not only Jessica saying, but what is she not saying? Right? And let me put a pin in this, without knowing the answer, can we all enjoy not knowing? And in that spaciousness of, I don't know what Jessica's saying or not saying, anything is possible. And now I allow all of what you're sharing with me to enter right into my beingness, right? Because it's not, you have to conform. I'm open. So I offer that as a way to really listen. Does that help?
See, perfect how you describe that, but in reality, I was taught that there's no such thing as I don't know, right? My dad. And so that means I grew up always looking for a reason, always analyzing. And I didn't learn that until probably 42 years later, that one of the best things you can say is I don't know, because we don't know everything. So to have to now deprogram myself, and that skill worked wonders in the military, because as a platoon sergeant, as a leader, we have to take risk assessments and predict things that could possibly happen to our soldiers. So in that world, it was perfect. But in my other worlds, it wasn't working. But I had to realize, like you said, and be with, like, where's that coming from? And I remember where I learned it. Like my dad was like, there's no such thing as I don't know. And if we don't know, we can go to the library and we can figure it out. But he did not want me saying, and if I said I don't know, he would grab my ear or put my like, and so it was like something that he was taught, I guess.
Sure, sure. But
You know?
but that's our conditioning,
Yeah.
Farron, right? I mean, we all need to have compassion for our parents or teachers who gave us ideas before we even had a filter system. You know, we absorbed it all. We know how we grow up. But now, 40 years later, you do. And now, in this lovely laboratory, you get to say, does that always serve me?
Yeah.
What I'm hearing you say is, no, no, it doesn't always serve me. So we have only this moment, right? So it behooves us, right? If we want to maximize or optimize our life, it's what serves me now.
Yeah.
What
And
serves
the
me
way
now.
you said that, because how we talk to ourselves is just as important as and the I'm not good enough, the I'm not smart, all those I'm nots, you know, they came from somewhere. They came from decisions that we made, from thinking we're listening to other people who are speaking into our lives or whatever that, you know, meaning we gave it. And so for people, I just want to say, you have to, those thoughts, like you said, you have to challenge those thoughts. And I had to find something outside of myself that I believed in, to who I was today, to gauge that thought up against, is that true today? You know, is that really who I am right now? And then and it's in the brain. So you're talking about nanoseconds that happens in our mindset. And if you have tools that you learn, that you believe in, that principle that you trust, and you learn those are the things I believe you can gauge yourself up against even before you open your mouth.
Right. So it's, for me, it's always asking.
Yeah.
Right? We have, and it does only require a nanosecond. So again, if we're agreeing to just listen, right, in that nanosecond, you get to again hear your truth. And of course, the conditioning, they did the best they could with what they knew. No
Mhm.
judgment there whatsoever. What's the point, right? But we ultimately are for responsible ability to respond versus react.
Mhm.
Right? It need not be a heavy-handed word, right? Responsibility is our ability to respond. Oh, please, may I have the ability to respond as opposed to react, right? Because if I'm on, right, if my limbic nerve is, I'm just reacting to everything, right? Then I'm not creating my life, right? With my ability, with using my frontal cortex, then I'm choosing, right, and responding, and then I'm creating my life, right? So, yeah.
This was such a beautiful example, though, of the power of listening and why it's important to listen. Because as we went into this conversation, you might have, not me, but somebody else might have thought that Farron always acts like he knows all the things. He never says I don't know, right? But because we listened to Farron's story about how he grew up, now we are hearing, okay, there were these situations where Farron was taught that it was okay for him not to know. And now I can come into conversation with Farron with more compassion because I understand where that idea is coming from, where I understand where that's coming from. So it's so important for us to listen, and because then we get to know each other, and then we don't have to react with such hostility and other things. Michele, I want to listen to what you have to say, and I want to ask you, what are the most important things that you would want people to know regarding listening?
Certainly all of what we just said. I wanted to, I don't know about the most important, Jessica, because whatever we said, I think was whatever needed to be said. But I want to just mention AI, our reliance on AI. And I actually do a whole presentation on it and how to beat, Chat GPT. And the reason we can is because, thank goodness, we now don't need to be the keeper of knowledge, right? AI can be the keeper of knowledge. We can elevate education, right, to no longer being the keeper of knowledge, but now we can focus on the person in front of us, right, as a human being, and their needs and their interests, right? And their relationships and their emerging sense of self, right? And so I'll just say that is what AI cannot do, right? That empathy. And going back to my alma mater, Citigroup, the CEO currently, Jane Fraser, said, this is not about a soft or hard skill. Empathy is a competitive advantage, right? Because we know about retention and being, losing people or quiet quitting. And no matter what machine you have sorting through who's coming in and doing all, right, ultimately the human being shows up, sometimes in a hybrid way. However, that whole environment, whether you listen to me, right, give me a voice, give me a seat at the table, whether I feel I belong, right, that is a human capability that no robot can replace, right? And I'll end it by saying, and looking into each other's eyes. I imagine those robots will be adorable, but I doubt that they will be as the windows of the souls as I see in the two of you.
Yeah.
So I worry not. I know it's always messy when any new invention shows up, but I just want to take a shout out to us our human, and we're evolving in this moment big time. So worry not. Go back into your heart and listen and see truly the infinite possibilities we are.
Thank you for adding that, Michele. I really appreciate that, because I know as you bring up the topic of AI, and everybody's talking about this, has been hot news the last couple of weeks. It's on everybody's mind. And I think for me, I always go back to that I saw a post just this morning on Facebook about how, I love that my AI listens to me, and it's like, or my chat thing listens to me. And I'm like, it doesn't, though. It was programmed to respond to you, but it's not really listening. And for me, you can't take away that very human nature that you're talking about. And so it's I've been told that I should just get on board or whatever. I think I was born in the wrong time, Michele.
No. You're born with me. And so Jessica, let's use it for the assets that it offers, the benefits it offers, and let's not assume it can be, truly a replacement for this energetic being that the three of us and everyone, here on 8 billion of us, are. Right? So let's use it. Absolutely. And it will be used inappropriately. All new inventions are. So, let's stop being silly and think it's going to be perfect. Nothing ever is, but we'll figure it out and we'll hold it accountable. It'll be as good as, actually, so I remember reading, it'll be as good as the questions we ask. Right? So again, it comes back to us.
So good. So good. I want to ask this before we go to our break and say goodbye to Michele. Angelica put, sometimes questions are unknowingly a cause of contradiction or confrontation for people when it comes to asking questions before communication. Do you guys have anything you want to add to that, or to talk directly to Angelica?
I certainly can. So I'm happy to be wrong. I'm happy to have someone respond in a way that I didn't expect. And I'm humble enough to say, I'm so sorry. I probably wasn't clear, or I was not clear. Can you give me a chance to better explain? Right? So again, they're feeling not my words, my intention. My intention was not whatever they, as she was saying, confrontational. I can say, I'm so sorry if you felt I was confrontational. Can I try to explain a little bit further if you're interested? But that certainly wasn't my intention. So being authentic and humble, and again, people will undoubtedly feel more than your words, or hear more than your words, your heart. Right? Your intention.
Thank you for that, Michele.
You're welcome.
I love that. Well, we are going to take a quick break here in a moment, but Michele, I thank you so much for joining us on the show tonight. And I put your website at the bottom there for everybody to go visit, collaborativesolutionsco.com.
LinkedIn maybe, and that would be a good place to please let's whoever's there tag me, or I guess you can't, or follow me. And it's Michele, Michel. Oh, you have the name. So
Yes,
just
it's down in the show notes as well.
There you go. Okay, so that would be the perfect place for us to connect. Thank you.
Thank you for today.
Of course.
Appreciate it. All right, you guys, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back with our next guest, Caldwell Williams. So stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back in just a second.
Hey, what's up, man? How you doing?
I'm blessed, my brother. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Hey, did you see the game last night?
Oh, that was a good game.
But did you see the shot?
I lost money from that shot.
Oh, man, that shot was cold,
I
man.
hated it, but it was good. Damn. What's in those jeans?
You really want to know?
I do.
Exhaustion, muscle spasms, asthmatic issues, unexpected sickle cell trait crises.
Damn. Are you serious? When I was young, I found out I had sickle cell trait. My mom's told me, but I ain't have no knowledge of it. But when I got older, I had a child, and the doctor told me my daughter has sickle cell trait. You know the facts that both parents have sickle cell trait? There's a 50% chance the child may have the trait, and 25% chance the child may have the disease.
Hey, that's what's the count. Do you know that 2.5 million people in the United States have sickle cell trait, 300 million people globally? I didn't find out I had sickle cell trait until I was in the Army, 10 years. Next thing you know, I had a sickle cell trait exertion site.
Sickle cell? I thought that was a black gene or something.
Nah, man, the Latin community is number 2. 1 out of 36,000 babies are being born with sickle cell disease. You could be Caucasian, Mediterranean, European. You gotta know your bloodline, man. There is an inherited gene in our community that has been forgotten. The name is sickle cell trait. WDCONSCT, also known as What's the Count, is out to bring awareness, education, and prevention to people all over the globe. Want more information? Call us now at 323-215-5384 or visit www.wdconsct.org.
First, there was PlayStation, aka PS1. Then there's PS2, PS3, and now PS4. And that makes sense. You'd think after Xbox, there'd be Xbox 2. But no. Next came Xbox 360. And now, after 360, comes Xbox One. Why one? Maybe that's how many seconds of thought they put into naming it.
Can you get the butter, please?
You know, however, with the Xbox One, I can control my entire entertainment system using voice commands. Up until now, I've had to use Leonard.
Then get the other one. Pass the butter.
Hang on. I don't feel like you're taking this dilemma seriously.
Fine, Sheldon. You have my undivided attention.
Okay, now, the PS4 is more angular and sleek looking.
No way!
It's true. But the larger size of the Xbox One may keep it from overheating.
Well, you wouldn't want your gaming system to overheat?
No, well, you absolutely would not. And furthermore, the Xbox One now comes with a Kinect included.
Included?
Yes. Not sold separately. Although the PS4 uses cool new GDDR5 RAM, while the Xbox One is still using the conventional DDR3 memory.
Why would they still be using DDR3? Are they nuts?
See, that's what I thought. But then they go and throw in an ES RAM buffer.
Whoa, wait a second. Who's they?
The Xbox.
You're kidding!
No, I am not. And this ES RAM buffer should totally bridge the 100 gigabit per second bandwidth gap between the two RAM types.
This is a nightmare. How will you ever make a decision?
See, I don't know. What should I do?
Please pass the butter!
I love that. I love that. And we had to put that in as a little, this is what active listening looks like. And this is what both
real.
parties look like when we don't listen.
I think I had a few conversations like that.
I love that. Special thanks to Michele for joining us for the first half of the episode. Farron, would you like to introduce our next guest, please?
You know, about 4 years ago, I went to do an interview at a veteran home, and there was a World War II veteran I was to be interviewing. And in the corner, I seen this man over here. And when I got done, he approached me and introduced himself and kind of talked about some things that kind of resonated with my spirit. And so we started to talk, and we've been speaking ever since. He has a great conversation about listening. He's a Korean era veteran. Let's bring up Caldwell Williams.
All right. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, hello, hello. And thanks for letting me listen in on to the previous section. Segment.
I love that. We're so excited to have you here tonight.
In as much as your conversation was about listening, what triggered in my mind, 1980, as I began my transition from public education to hanging out my shingle as a corporate consultant, I had gotten a degree in 1957 from UCLA in business, at which time people from my tribe were not welcome in corporate America. And so I was launching an attempt to complete what I started in the 50s. And at the corner of a major boulevard in Los Angeles near the UCLA campus was a high-rise tower, at the top of which was a gigantic billboard that said, "At Sperry," Sperry, "at Sperry, we know how important it is to listen." And I hurried back to my little office and got on the phone, long distance operator, to connect with Sperry because I wanted to know about their listening program. And after a week of telephone referrals, one person to another, I finally reached a marketing organization who said, "Oh, that's just a marketing slogan." There ensued, I knew a fellow who was vice president of the American Red Cross. One of his sons had been a student of mine, so I had access to him. He had access to his office in Washington, D.C., and sent a Red Cross employee to the Library of Congress to scour college catalogs in the United States to find who offered a course in listening. And in 1980, they could not find a single university catalog in the United States that offered a course in listening. And I would challenge anybody who's listening to this now to do the same research. You might find enough colleges to count on your fingers. We are a presentation culture, and we always have been. And every communication course is a presentation course of one sort or another. And so that started, 1980 started my journey to see what to learn what I could and to make a contribution, I thought, in an area where I was hanging out a shingle as someone offering services for compensation. I will tell you now, what I've come to do is narrow the broad communication universe to focus upon dialogue, because we communicate in a whole lot of ways. Our previous guest talked about listening to the heart, body posture. There's productivity, a lot of ways we communicate. I want to focus on dialogue. And when I did research on the question of problems in organizations, the number one item on the list of every research was breakdowns in communication.
Hmm.
And that still obtains. So I want to break that down to focus upon where I think, where I know a major problem exists, maybe the major problem exists, which is dialogue. And I'll give you the definition that I've evolved with a lot of help from people. I'm 89 years old, so the journey's been long, and I've talked to and listened to a lot of people. Dialogue. The intentional, harmonious recreation and exchange of experience. When I have an experience over here, and I want you to be aware of it, and we're in the kind of relationship where you're curious enough or interested enough that you're willing to be aware of it, I give you a cue to what my experience is. Ouch. Tell me what you got.
You hurt yourself.
Severely, minor?
Minor. Yeah, minor.
I'll go with minor.
And the way you did that is you recreated an ouch. And in your life experience, an ouch was a little thing, not a big thing. That's an example of the definition, which is verifiable and unquestionably in the verification, we're not going to have a misunderstanding. You don't call 911 for an ouch.
Mm.
And I could have exhibited behavior on this connection that the two of you would have been alarmed enough to check to see if how you could get emergency equipment to take care of this old man. Okay. Intentional, both parties are present for one another. Harmonious, so we're it's a dance, we're together on this. Recreation is more than duplication, more than imitation. It's the feel the way it feels to feel that way. It's the lyrics and the tune, be available for both. And on my journey to this point, I discovered and we got through people willing to duplicate the words, but not willing to recreate the experience.
Mm.
And that could, for 1,000 reasons, that could be, oh, it takes me to a place I don't want to go. It reminds me of something that was unpleasant, or whatever the reason is. And in your earlier conversation, your guest, in my language, talked about essentially willingness to experience ambiguity, not knowing.
Mm.
It's like I can have a relationship with you and get along well with you, and and feel comfortable saying when you ask me a question, I don't know that one. And if it's important enough for both of us, we can go and pursue it. One of the things I found in my years of working with youth, the lower we go down on the social, education, and cultural scale, the more apt the parent is to be afraid of saying, I don't know.
Mm.
And so not wanting to look bad, the simplest thing is to exert your authoritarian control. Because I said so, don't bother me. Okay. And that little anecdote that I shared about my time with Milo, my 12-year-old grandson on Tuesday, he's in transition from childhood to adolescence. And he is saying to his father, who is a good dad and had planned the whole day to be sure that his sons and his dad had a good time together, but it was his good time. He has this whole list of wonderful things to do so that you guys and my 12-year-old grandson, in a very respectful way, said no, no, no. And finally, I'd like for Grandpa and me to just talk. I don't need you to plan our day. We can do it. And the father got it immediately and went away and didn't bother us the rest of the day. And we had a wonderful time together. A less sophisticated father might not have handled it so well. Mm-hmm. After all this planning, all I've done, you're saying no, no, no. And my son, my grandson's father, and I haven't had this follow-up conversation, but it is my intention that we have it, because this father is a wonderful father, wonderful husband, and doesn't realize how controlling he is. And he's got away with it for 12 years.
Yeah.
And Milo is now saying, my turn. and so dad needs to make that transition. And before I leave that subject, Farron is familiar with my ongoing relationship with my sons and my family, et cetera. And at long last, I came to realize my son, Jeffrey, was 14 when my father died. My father was 91. I'm number 10 of 11 kids, and I had middle-aged parents. My dad was 52 when I was born. So Jeffrey grew up writing his script about grandfather relationships, and it was exclusively when dad takes me to see grandfather is when I and he wrote his script around that. I didn't realize that because now I'm very active and want to participate. And he is going, wait a minute. No, I want you to be his grandfather, not his teacher. and I'm going, what do you think grandfathers do? That's the only value we have. Yeah. So that's been the dance that we've been in. And what I came to realize is, Milo, and the thing that helped me to realize this, they had visited me one day at my apartment, and I had purchased Xbox games and other stuff for the kids to play with when they were here, when they didn't want to hang out with grandfather. But this was ages 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay. When I realized I want to be proactive in participation with my grandchildren, and that's a new script for my son. He had never had that. And so when I realized that, I think I said to Farron, I'm willing to be patient. Excuse me. It's my responsibility to live long enough for Milo to grow up, and we'll develop our own relationship and teach his dad that it's possible for his son to have relationships that father is not navigating and directing. Talk to me, Farron. What do you
and I appreciate you sharing those anecdotes, because what I hear you saying is, even before we get to the level of listening, we got to deal with how we listen to ourselves. And sometimes, or a lot of times, we make up our own story about ourselves, which thwarts us to even be able to listen to somebody else effectively.
I would suggest who else is going to make up our story if we don't?
Mm.
We all do. Not necessarily consciously, but we are seeing and experiencing, and we're telling our own stories about what that experience means. And then other people are participating with us, sometimes even rebutting our own stories about us. Oh, no, you were.
And how does that sense of belonging interfere with the listening ability for another person that's in front of you?
I am in the midst, and you are aware more of this probably than I give you credit for. We had a group of people who were insurrectionists, we call them, who attacked the Capitol of the United States. The predominant, almost exclusive color of their skin was white. I have a friend who's been an acquaintance for 25 years, and we've been friends for 16 years. Peter Haight's ancestors arrived in New England in 1629. Peter Haight is a 12th generation, Yale Wall Street for 12 generations. Peter Haight lost 90 employees and a partner in the attack on the World Trade Center towers. Peter Haight moves through the culture or society like butter through warm syrup. I lost my picture of you guys.
Yeah, we're still here. We're still here.
Oh. The Peter Haight's background is English. He's an Englishman, and there were no Englishmen at the Capitol. There was some Irish, and there was some Scots. But what's also true is for 200 or 300 years, Englishmen have dominated Ireland and Scotland, and the romantic story that was told in my history classes, and I have their graduate degrees, and your history classes, the romantic notion of this marvelous assimilation, which is praiseworthy. I'm not questioning that. But until we are more fully truthful, we'll not solve the problems. If the problem isn't solved, question the diagnosis. Question the prescription comes from the diagnosis, and if it's not working, that something's wrong back there. And here's what I'm finding that keeps getting validated as I talk to adults, successful adults in the contemporary culture. This vast land that Englishmen wanted to control. They were competing with the Spaniards and the French, and they needed people to populate the land to gain control. And part of the motivation was put together a PR operation. Opportunity, the land of opportunity. Come one and come all. Up until this experiment, we were tribal as far back as history can record. We're all from tribes. And the tribe was people who were related to one another, okay? And then the evolution led from tribe to boundaries around the tribe to protect our resources, creating a nation state. And so the tribe and the nation state adopted the same name, you know, the German and the Polish. Okay. this experiment said, for the first time in history that we know about, you're welcome here, no matter the tribe from which you come. All tribes are welcome. And that was attractive. And people who had it not too good where they were eager to pursue this opportunity. But the untold story in my history books is that the caveat that came with "you're welcome here" is, but you are not included in the first class Englishman community. You may come if you will agree to remain subordinate. And so the history books in their romantic telling of the story was, well, people clustered in communities that they were familiar with. But what's also true is simultaneously the forces that caused that to happen was Englishmen confined you to ghettos. They didn't call them ghettos, but ghettos of your tribe. So there was a German community in the Nordics were in Minnesota, and people put up with it and didn't challenge the story out of fear of offending and being kicked out. Yeah. And today, very much of what was discussed in the previous segment about our struggles to listen is related to not having handled our tribal separation, which is also a language separation. And the larger the corporation or the larger the organization, the more you see springing up those problems, those communication problems, those cultural problems, really. And on Sundays, I go to an Episcopal church for the last 25 years in Santa Monica. Ostensibly white, assimilated. Down the block is a Roman Catholic church. And down the other block is a Methodist church. And these people don't
communicate at all.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We got
and they make each other wrong. Okay.
We got a few more minutes, Caldwell. I want to, with the things that you share, which is important for us to go all the way back, right, to how this the broad stroke is communication, and then there's elements of communication, listening, who's responsible. But what you're saying is, at the core of our culture, we're disconnected as a people because of
we've not connected at the level that the romantic story tells. And unless we first acknowledge that, then we can begin a dialogue. Well, how do we heal this? How do we fix this? Because it's not being fixed because we're not telling the truth about it. And I haven't heard anyone, even the pundits, talk about, well, what is the grievance of these people who attacked the Capitol?
Yeah,
they are multi-generations pissed off about being excluded. Ivy League schools, all are in the Northeast. While the Southerners who had slaves said, we don't want to play that game. Don't mess with us. And the evolution of this country was centered in the Northeast, to the resentment of the Southerners who weren't participating in the game because they wanted to keep their slaves. And so they have for generations resented those elite Northeasterners, and later on those Hollywood types. And that's true across the Midwest as well.
Right. I think you struck a nerve with Jessica Caldwell. I think
my feelings are hurt.
But the point,
struck a nerve.
I'm doing that. I'm seeking to do that because I don't have any animosity in between.
Yeah.
we're in a trial and error game. This boy who had the knee on his neck and was killed. I said to Farron, everybody's celebrating this kid going to prison. He's a victim of the same culture that is going undiagnosed and unhealed. Why does he objectify this man on whose neck he had his knee? That's a cultural thing. One of the most inspiring life transformations in my lifetime, and I've been at this, for more than half a century, as a young man from rural Wisconsin, Marine Corps killer veteran from Afghanistan and Iraq, highly decorated, came to my veterans group bragging about white power and denigrating blacks and Latinos. And my veteran group was a diverse group, and they wanted to beat him up. And I said, no, we don't throw anybody away. This kid is hurting. Yeah, he's trying to hurt us. This kid, finally, when he had enough trust to speak to me, pulled me aside privately and said, my mother was poor white trailer trash. I lived in rural Wisconsin. I didn't know who my father was. I didn't have a name for my father until I was 15. I was bright. So I did well in school. And I looked around, and everybody who had power were white. So I adopted, as best I could, their philosophy and their language. And rural Wisconsin, white are racist, xenophobes, okay? And he said, I never was exposed to your type thinking until I met you. And what you're saying makes more sense. And as I test it out each day, I keep getting validated.
Yeah.
And so since then, he has referred other people that he has met. Go call Caldwell. and Farron and I are just beginning a dialogue with a colonel who was head of a helicopter unit in Vietnam, who's 82 years old, who this decade discovered social awareness, self-awareness. He encountered my ex-Marine to try to enroll the Marine in his mindfulness course. And David said to him, oh, you need to call Caldwell, without telling him anything. So he called me to enroll me in his mindfulness course. And I said, if you'll give me an email address, I'll send you some information. So I sent him some information about the mindfulness that I elevated to co-equal with cognitive instruction in my charter school. I received the first California charter for a public school in 1970. And mindfulness, we didn't call it mindfulness, we called it affective learning. So my mindfulness road started in 1970, and it blew him away. And he stayed away for a month. I thought he was gone forever, but he came back saying, apparently he had done his vetting, and I want to learn from you. So,
Caldwell, again, thank you for taking time, because you set the tone for us to take this listening to a whole nother level when it comes to social conversations, even from amongst us as loving our neighbor and talking to our neighbor. How can I love my neighbor if I don't love myself in the same measure, right? And so what the first guest, what she said and what you said to me come together, because it goes back to what my other part of the 2D says, is that it's going to start with us first, and we have to peel off all those layers of what's been passed down to us as conversations through our culture, through our tribes, through our dialogues of upsets and frustrations. And we wonder why we can't listen to one another, because we're carrying so many stories that are not us.
Do I have time for 1 minute?
I don't know. One more minute.
We can take another minute because I could have story time with Caldwell for hours and be completely fine.
But this is an agenda item.
Mm.
The transition from elementary to middle school is crucial. And in that universe offers opportunity for us to nip this problem about which we're concerned in the bud. We lose 70% at least of our children, low expectations and improper instruction in that transition. Your previous guest talked about AI and not being worried about AI, because AI just, listen, when I was a child, I worked, saved in newspapers and scrap iron and all kinds of stuff to earn money to buy an encyclopedia. Okay, all that information, AI's handle all that. The education, when we have the people in front of us, is a human interaction. And the curriculum, which was really designed to help people memorize stuff that's in the encyclopedia, is now evolving and for the first time recognizing mental health as an issue. That's the language that's being used, but your guest stated it, I think, more appropriately. It's heart-to-heart stuff that I got excoriated in 1970 for doing it, but that was in the Reagan years. He had just taken over Sacramento, and I got excoriated for teaching un-American concepts to these innocent, wealthy West Side children. Yoga, meditation, Tai Chi.
Back in the day.
Back in the day. And now there's a yoga shop on every corner in Los Angeles.
Caldwell, man, thank you so much.
But we need to work with the middle school kids.
Yeah, the middle school, definitely the middle school age for that listening, so we can start to heal and break those cycles.
Yes.
With our children. And hopefully when they're our age, these kind of conversations won't be had because they'll have the skills and the tools to listen effectively and communicate and create the sense of belonging that some of our ancestors, if we told the truth, came to this country in their own separate areas, right? So how do you have a United States where we're really not united, and things like that? So Jessica, thank you for letting him, kind of go over a little bit with his shares, but he opened up the door for us for a whole slew of, like, it's like going back. It's like we stood in communication in the first episode, and then how do we get here? It goes all the way back to ancestors and coming to this country. Mm-hmm. Like all of that impacts our ability to listen effectively and communicate. So I appreciate you, Caldwell. Thank you.
Thank you, Caldwell. I would love for you to come back. I said I'm here for story time with Caldwell anytime. I'm here for it.
Work it out with my boy, and
I will. I absolutely will. We really appreciate you being here, Caldwell. Thank you. Thank you. Farron, to say that our guests have opened the door is the understatement of the decade. Because even when he was talking about going back, I'm excited to get into some of that conversation as well, because even as I got into doing genealogy for my family and learned about when my ancestors from Sicily came here to the United States, and they weren't treated, really, really well either. And I know that there's like names were changed because they didn't listen. Because they didn't listen. And so I think we're going to have a good time in 2 weeks. We're going to do a little... I'm already like, can we do it tomorrow? Can we do the conversation tomorrow?
Is there room on the network?
I'm excited to get into it. In 2 weeks, you guys, I hope you'll come back and we're going to continue our conversation on communication. Angelica and Angelique were both excited about what Caldwell was talking about and said thank you for him being here as well. Thank you, Michele, for being here. Thank you, Farron, for holding this space together.
Who-wee.
I know. I
This is
need
what
a minute.
we pray for, right? This is what we pray for, right?
It
From the
is.
beginning. So here we are, and we're gonna end up completing the communication and going on to the next stage of it, which is going to be some of these social things and where it's really stemming from, you know, and how do we break that cycle from our culture and keep the culture, but some of the conversations in the culture was just a lot of times we make up our own story, and those stories are not the truth. So if I'm listening to you from my story and you got your story, then we're gonna battle and argue about our story. But if we're able to listen to where your story came from, if I have enough confidence and courage to say, you know what, I'm gonna put my conversation aside, and as she mentioned, ask more questions, I will get a sense of where your conversations are coming, even how you learned to even talk about the stuff that we're trying to talk about, where that came from. It transforms that in that experience to me putting myself in your world. And like you just said, from where your answers came from, I can only imagine coming to the United States with that kind of stuff that was going on. So if we really tell the truth, all of our cultures are dealing with something, some sense of belonging.
Absolutely.
And that sense of belonging doesn't allow us to communicate, as what Caldwell was saying. It doesn't allow us to even communicate or listen to one another with all that stuff in the background from ancestors, and then what the media says about it, what the papers say about, what the school says. Like, it's all in our minds, and how do we cipher through what is our truth today?
Right.
And that's a lot of work.
It is. My hope is, so the plan is that next week we're going to wrap up this conversation on communication.
I agree. We wrap up that.
I feel like now, because this isn't the topic that this show was going to start on. We had another topic in mind, but then this, we had timing, and then this happened, and I couldn't, like, really truly, for this to be the conversation that's going to lay the groundwork for this show, for us to go into every deep dive topic now with these concepts on listening and communicating effectively. Could there be anything more perfect than, I'm so excited now, and I'm so excited to share this space with you, Farron. Thank you.
I'm good. Thank you for the platform, and thank you for allowing Caldwell to share his stories, because people need to hear how important, because now they can look in their own life and look at the stories that they've been told or taught, and now they can go and question and listen from another perspective of their own life, and that's how we can start to manage and heal one another, in our conversations. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, Michele, thank you as well. Thank you, Caldwell. Thank all of you for watching or listening wherever you are in the world today. Rhonda was here. Excellent topics. We've got lots of feedback out in the audience as well. Thank you so much for that participation. And we will see you guys in 2 weeks for another episode of Beyond 2D. See you next time, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.